we're back, and boy, you know, I remember not liking that one as much as I did tonight. I really did like that one, and there's just a million comparisons that everybody likes the original or everybody likes this one. They're two completely different experiences for me. You have to get into old movie mode for the first one, and this one just sort of happens. Yeah, I think we kind of agree. We really like this one tonight, and it would be real interesting to get your feedback as to which movie you like better. I do feel though that it was too long. You know, it sort of dragged towards the end there. It's a 2-hour long movie. I think we sort of calculated it was 30 or 40 minutes before there was even a problem with the you know, when you realize what the problem was. That's too long for a 2-hour movie. Especially the bit at the end where you have this fantastic climactic sequence at the Royal Albert Hall, and then the movie keeps going, and it's like, didn't we just have that big scene at the Royal Albert Hall? So yeah, it could have been better if it was shorter, but you know, you imagine there just was so much for them to put in, and they whittled it down, I'm sure, just to 2 hours. So Doris Day was sure good. Boy, she that scene where her husband, Dr. McKenna, tells her that their boy's been kidnapped. Apparently Doris Day tells this story that well, no, not Doris Day, but somebody tells the story that they rehearsed that in private, her and James Stewart, but when it came time to do it, she did that in one take, and it was very impressive, and she really, that was really, we'll call her one take Doris Day, but really good stuff. James Stewart as well. Boy, he's sure got some natural comedic ability. The scene where he's sitting down on the floor at that restaurant and just with his feet. I mean, how do you script that? That's just James Stewart. We love the guy. Sadly, we only get to see him one more time in Vertigo. So it does take 12 minutes for Doris Day to start singing, and that's about right. And you know, I must admit, you know, for a while when I was researching this movie, I would get that song stuck in my head. It is catchy. So and it turned out, you know, when she recorded it, she said that she really didn't think it was very good, and apparently she remarked to her friend after the recording session, she said, "Well, you'll never hear that song again." Well, it did turn out to be her signature song. It actually was the theme music to her TV show, so I like it just fine. So speaking of music, that was sure a great scene with Bernard Herrmann, you know, at the end in the big Royal Albert Hall climax scene. He was given the opportunity by Alfred Hitchcock to rewrite that music, but he found the original music in the 1934 version so appropriate that he didn't. And that really says something about Bernard Herrmann. It was his chance to show off, and he was right. The music is great. And if you notice, the music in the movie is very subtle throughout, perhaps because he felt the whole point of the movie is going to be this music, the music as a plot device, so let's just chill for the rest of it. But just excellent. You really realize you're with someone who knows exactly what they're doing. And speaking of music being used as a plot device, it's used as a plot device twice in tonight's movie, where you know, when the guy's supposed to get shot, the ambassador, I guess he was the prime minister, wasn't he? Supposed to get shot with the cymbals crashing, and then with her singing that song and hearing her boy whistling the tune. That was quite neat. And we're back to Ambiguous Countries, you know, all those great thrillers that he wrote with Charles Bennett. He wrote with Charles Bennett 7 times that we did the screenwriting, if you include Blackmail. That's a lot. All those great scenarios pre-World War II, where we knew there was a bad guy, we knew he had a foreign European accent, but we didn't know which country because they wanted to stay out of it before World War II happened. Same sort of deal here. Doesn't care about politics, keeps the movie sort of fresh today, and you know, that'll become a factor when we watch the movie The Torn Curtain, because you know, that was about politics, and it doesn't work today because of it, because we're all past those politics. So anyways, very interesting. So you know, when I was watching it, you know, we just loved Peter Lorre. We loved his bad guy in the original, and I was remarking to Diane, well, you know, the bad guy in this is no Peter Lorre, and you know, he is a charming villain, and what was more interesting to Alfred Hitchcock, and this is something that Diane convinced me of immediately, it was more interesting to him to have an unassuming guy as the bad guy, as usual, that you would never suspect. And just like he took an ordinary man and put him in these dangerous situations, well, you know, when you make the bad guy an ordinary man, that's more interesting. I mean, when Peter Lorre's in the movie, you pretty much know he's the bad guy. Hitchcock wasn't really out to scare us. He was out to put us in these suspenseful situations. And we all have someone in our lives who is unassuming and could have been that British preacher guy. None of us have someone in our life, well, we better not, that looks like Peter Lorre. And so that really is more clever, and maybe that's one of the reasons that he felt this movie was the work of a a seasoned professional rather than a talented amateur. But what have you, it's all good. So the cameo, if you missed it, was at 25 minutes and 40 seconds. He had his back to us, kind of like in The Lodger. Remember that very first cameo we saw? He had his back to us. So, alright, so we got to get into it. The John Michael Hayes thing. This is the last of the 4 films that he wrote. I mentioned in the pre-movie comments that to get the project going, Alfred Hitchcock brought in his friend Angus MacPhail, who he had worked with before and will work again in next week's movie, The Wrong Man, and then really let John Michael Hayes write the script. Well, when it came time to submit, who gets the credit for things, Alfred Hitchcock submitted both of their names as co-screenplay writers, and that didn't sit well with John Michael Hayes, who challenged Hitchcock on that and ultimately appealed that decision with the Screenwriters Guild of America, who took what he wrote and took what Angus MacPhail wrote, and when they wrote it and they looked into it and they realized it was all John Michael Hayes and sided with him, that didn't go over real well with Alfred Hitchcock. Apparently things might have been said like, well, you'll never work for me again and what have you, and they didn't. I imagine this is all covered really well in the book out there called Running with Hitchcock, written by Stephen DeRosa, who spoke with John Michael Hayes many times, interviewed him. I've not read the book, but I mean to, I will, and not great. It is nice to see John Michael Hayes on all these featurettes, including on the one for tonight's movie, and do see him again. We saw his next film. He wrote the screenplay for Peyton Place, a really long movie and soap opera, and mostly his job there was to sort of sanitize the book, because the book was just full of sex and violence and killing and all these sorts of things, and he had to clean it up to get past the censors. But in watching it, it's not fair to compare, but certainly none of the snappy, witty dialogue. I wonder if the best out of him was seen in these 4 Hitchcock movies, and not a bad thing. I mean, if you're going to be a one-hit wonder, why not be in 4 great movies? Some people's all-time favorite movies, or maybe one he wrote. So we are done with John Michael Hayes, and if you're interested, certainly you can check out that book, Writing with Hitchcock. I will one day. I just haven't yet. So good. Boy, this movie was certainly had the mother of all staircases. Back in those old movies, we'd see the climax at the staircase, and this time, Diane's like, just push him down the staircase, and he did, and staircase after staircase. That was really cool. So okay, so we're all done with this one, but we have to stay in 1956 for the 6th movie in this 3-year span. Boy, they were sure busy, and that'll be so we'll talk about movies in 1956 and what won Best Picture and all that stuff. So good. That'll be next week's 1956 The Wrong Man with Peter Fonda and Vera Miles, and so good. So we look forward to it. We look forward to the comments. So until then, from our couch to yours, we will see you next week.